This is a Strategist episode 1848F. My name is Zain Velji. With me, as always, Corey Hogan, Stephen Carter. Carter, what does the F stand
for? Fucked.
Fucked, indeed.
Didn't take much time on that, though.
Yeah,
no,
fucked.
it took it actually took more time than it needed to, Carter.
Yeah,
you were just 1.5 beats, and we needed the half beat there. That should have been tip of your tongue.
Sorry,
Are you just going around all day saying fucked? Because I know you are, Corey.
All day.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, my socials kind of relay that point pretty strongly, I think, right now.
Yeah, where
can
need
people
to
put myself on a bit of a timeout? You know what? Hey, we've never talked about this. Okay. CoreyHogan.ca. I got a Substack now. It's got 4 articles. I got a Substack with 4 articles. I started it in November. So my articles per month are not great yet.
Over 1,000 subscribers. That's not bad.
You know what? And that's only
even paying
4 articles.
Aren't even paying you?
They're paying me in attention, which is the only currency that matters in 2025.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's a good answer.
Lord
that's
knows
a good answer.
The Canadian dollar doesn't mean sweet fuck all anymore.
It's a little problematic, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I do like that you're pumping the Strategist podcast. You are saying other places to find me includes the Strategist. This is an interesting Corey Hogan logo. It's like a modern day checker cab.
Yeah. I go with the classics, Zane. You know what? I picked a color. I didn't want the color to be associated with a political party, so I went with yellow.
Oh,
I thought yellow was good. Yeah.
You have frequently asked questions on your Substack, and one of them is,
I do.
What is Stephen Carter like? And the answer is nobody knows. Carter, would you like to interject?
No, I think that's exactly right. Yeah.
None of us can really know Stephen.
No one knows Stephen Carter.
Yeah.
These are not bad. These are not bad FAQs, including the fact that you humble brag your GMAT score, Corey. Just get that inserted in there.
Corey, I'm so proud of you. Like, you were the first person to notice that I created an about page, and you realized it. Yeah. You not only is it you who realized it, but you realized it on air, and so I'm just really proud of you right now.
Well,
I'm proud of me right now too, if I'm being honest.
Well, 4 articles, 1,000 subscribers. I mean, that's not bad at all.
It's not a bad ratio.
I doubt any of these articles are good. I'm sure 3 out of 4 of them have not aged well.
Oh no, actually, I think I'm okay with all of them right now.
Yeah.
Did you read them, Carter? Are they good?
Yeah. No, I have no idea. I didn't remember. I don't remember.
Okay.
They didn't really land in your mind.
But none of the content stuck in my head.
Speaking of remember, Carter, can we let's just jump into our first segment. Our first segment, This Means War. Stephen Carter, can you remember the last 24 hours? And where were you on Saturday night when Luka Doncic got traded?
Where was I? I was at home. I saw it happen.
It's like, do a TikTok for us, like a TikTok, like how it happened for you.
I was scrolling my Blue Sky because I don't do the X very much anymore. I was scrolling my Blue Sky, and actually, I think that something came up about a Luka thing, and I immediately thought, "Oh, I don't care about that. My name's not Luka," and I kept going.
Is that your?
And then I thought of the Suzanne Vega
social
song, "My Name Is Luka."
And then you thought,
that's the end of my thoughts.
All right, that's pretty good, though.
So, Corey, we've learned from Carter that he only cares about things that mention his name, so probably minimal value in this tariff conversation we're about to have, as there is no direct tariff or retaliatory tariff against Stevens or Carter's.
Stephen Miller was involved.
Can you tell Stephen Miller was involved, for sure. It is domestic policy, and that guy, and I don't know, I'm not going to say it because I just don't know the current status of our libel insurance. Corey, tell me, where were you when Luka Doncic got traded to the LA Lakers?
I think I was somewhere in the vicinity of watching the Trudeau talk about the tariff retaliation, I guess, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. I mean, at least it gives Donald Trump a fighting chance of not being, the worst trade decision of the day. But it remains to be seen, right?
Yeah.
I think we can all agree. Weird trade, right? Weird trade.
Was it really, though? I mean, after the vice president of basketball operations removed the beer from his hand, wasn't that a clear signal that Luka wasn't going to be staying any longer?
Why would that be a clear signal? That's a clear signal that he shouldn't have a beer.
We can't respect you as a man. We can't respect you as a man. You can't be trusted to drink your own beer. It'd be like if Zain went to your house right now and removed that canned beverage from your cold dead hand.
Yeah, but he wouldn't, because he respects me as a man.
He respects you as a man. Yeah. So the second I saw that, I thought to myself, "There's why he got traded."
So Zain, how do you feel about that one?
Corey, I have to say, no, let me just jump in here. I listen. Carter's had the better basketball take than you on this, Corey. Okay, Carter with his minimal knowledge has nailed this once again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Carter. I'm hoping Carter, you can bring that same energy to the fuckery that is now a trade war that begins on Tuesday. Well, in many ways, it's already begun because
yeah.
Carter, give me your. Let's just start with thoughts, and then we'll start with analysis, and then we'll lead into strategy. Give me non-directional, or even if you'd like to make them directional, thoughts around on where your head's at, where we sit today, February 2nd, nearly 9 p.m. at night.
Well, that noted liberal rag, the Wall Street Journal, didn't it call this the most unnecessary trade war ever?
Yeah.
That to me is kind of what strikes me is if we had a president that actually understood trade, if we had a president that actually understood how trade deficits work and all of those types of things, I think he would be able to see that you get a value for that, right? But instead, he's trapped in a world where he doesn't understand value. He doesn't understand getting something for paying something. Lord knows he never pays for anything. So this is, and I think the Wall Street Journal nailed it, the most unnecessary trade war ever, and we're in the middle of it.
Corey, let's start with some thoughts from your end.
Well, the Wall Street Journal called it the dumbest trade war in history. Like, they pulled no punches. But I think that it's only the dumbest trade war in history if you assume it's about trade, because it makes absolutely no sense, right? Like, this idea of a surplus that Canada enjoys with the United States, that's well worn. You don't need to go to this podcast to understand that. It's nonsense. It's like saying that, my grocery store has a surplus with me because I buy more groceries from it. Like, it's not a subsidy. It doesn't it doesn't track. It seems unbelievable to me that Donald Trump at some point in the past, I don't know, his really ancient life hasn't been told, hey man, this is what tariffs actually are. It's not the point. He knows that. He doesn't care. This is not about trade. This is not about equality of trade. It's certainly not about fucking fentanyl, which there's very little of going across the border. And I would argue, as a Canadian, probably more troubling things coming across the border from the United States in volume than this path. And really, it's about two things in my mind. It's about money. He wants to have an awful lot of money so that he can move out of having an income tax, or at least as quote unquote high of one. It's not a very high income tax in the United States, but still. And it's about control. It's about saying, I'm going to push my weight around. Maybe if I play my cards right, I can get the 51st state. I can get my face put on Mount Rushmore. Everything that he's done since he's been reelected has been crazy town. And this is just one in a long line of crazy town. It has nothing to do with trade. We have to stop treating him like he's a rational actor with legitimate concerns, using trade as a legitimate tool.
Corey, where do you think our Canadian leaders are on that particular wavelength you've just mentioned in terms of accepting Trump's premise versus rejecting it? There's a spectrum of in terms of where our leaders are at least how we sense. But as a collective, where do you think we're at? And are we far enough down the track of rejecting his fentanyl border premise in some way? How do you think we're striking that? I shouldn't say balance, because that's not the goal, but how do you think we're doing on this?
I mean, so this is old school diplomacy that the federal government has to do right now. And I'm saying this because I want to preface it with one thing, which is the federal government's under no obligation to say what they mean. They're under no obligation to say the same thing in public as they're saying to the United States privately. And so if you were going to judge things entirely by the actions of the Canadian government in public, you would have to say they're clearly not far enough along, right? Like, they don't seem to realize this is not a trade war. They're using trade as a punitive response here, right? But I just don't believe, based on reporting around the edges, based on some of the word choices that they made and the subtext in it, some of the implied threats that are going on, that they don't understand what this is actually about. Now, the Canadian government sort of almost has an obligation of trying to look reasonable. It's funny, it sucks, it's annoying that we have to deal with Donald Trump where there's no such obligation. But when it comes to the Canadian government, on round one, at least, they kind of have to take Trump on his word and be like, well, it sounds like you've got a problem with this. Well, we'll try to reasonably do that. And it's not because the rest of the world expects it. It's not because Canadians want it. It's because the audience, if there is any audience that has a chance of reining in Donald Trump, it's the Republicans, it's the Republican governors, it's the people around him. And Canada's trying to remove the grievances from the table, so all that's left is nonsense. I mean, it's nonsense right now, but you know what I'm saying. And then hope that people will try to pull this thing back onto the rails.
Carter, how are we doing in terms of trying to fully understand the scope of the threat and what it is trying to highlight in terms of the soft tissue in the Canadian sort of relationship with the U.S. that Trump's trying to exploit?
I think we're doing pretty well. I think that Justin Trudeau understands. I think Corey's point about that, taking this in steps and understanding that our response is going to be kind of a tit for tat to begin with, but, will ultimately shift as the knowledge becomes more as more known to all Canadians. I'm anticipating lots of different shifts from various leaders, but I was really impressed to see David Eby's response in British Columbia and Doug Ford's response in Ontario. They both not only jumped on board with what Trudeau was doing, but they went further. I loved seeing the American alcohol being pulled off of the shelves. That to me, it's just one little thing. Like it's not
going to a warehouse to be sold later, but
yeah, it'll still be sold. But it's just one little thing that sets the tone, right? Canadian stores are starting to put up Buy Canadian signs. We're going to see a lot of that, especially with the dollar plunging against the American dollar.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have all that alcohol back. Aged one trade war, I'm sure. But I think that the fact is, Canadians and most of the politicians that Canadians are represented by seem to realize that the national mood is one of frustration and borderline rage. Like you of course have seen all of the sporting events, the hockey games that have happened coast to coast, the Raptors game that happened earlier today. The American anthem comes on. People are booing. They're booing in Calgary. They're booing in Vancouver. They're booing in Montreal. They're booing in Toronto. People aren't very happy right now. And that's being funneled by a lot of the leaders that are seeing this. They're saying, okay, well, there's a parade and I want to get in front of it. And so it's hard to say that the politicians are not well calibrated to that moment. By and large, I'm fucking sure we're going to get to Scott Moe and Danielle Smith at some point. Mm-hmm. But when you look at Canada en masse, it seems okay. Like a huge part of me, of course, wanted to see Justin Trudeau go for the absolute jugular last night, introduce a bunch of wild things. But that's fine for step 2. That's fine for step 3. Step 1 of saying, okay, no, we are going to retaliate, and here's our escalation, makes sense. You don't want to go all in before you've seen the flop. You certainly have to know that Donald Trump has said he's going to retaliate to your retaliation, so you want to have some room to go from there. So what they're doing is fine. Like it's not like inspirational, get me jumping on my couch and cheering. It's fine. It's the kind of thing you'd want a Canadian leader to do, and it's pretty well tuned. Yeah, I can't complain too much.
Carter, how's Trudeau doing? How did he do last night, both with the suite of retaliatory measures, as well as how did he politically perform last night for your analysis?
Well, I mean, I had a number of people say to me today that if this Trudeau had shown up over the last couple of years, that maybe he would have survived.
Of course, everyone says that. But
I'll be honest, I watched it and I didn't think that at all. I thought this is the Trudeau that shows up. This is the overly, he brought Serious Trudeau, and Serious Trudeau places his voice in a special part of his throat where he starts to talk and make sure that everybody understands that it's very, very important to Canada. And it just fucking makes me insane because it's not real. I used the exact same voice when I was doing, monologues in my university drama classes, which is why I no longer do monologues in university. Like they sucked. They were horrible. No one should have been subjected to them. But Justin Trudeau found a way to bring his drama to all of us. And I don't begrudge him what he's done. I think that what he did was exactly right. I have a couple of points. Number one, talk like a human being. I mean, you're on your way out now. You may as well give it a whirl just on your way out. And Dominic LeBlanc, get your fucking hands out of your pocket. You look like you're touching something. It's not appropriate.
I just don't know if that's on Trudeau, but I take that point.
The Dom LeBlanc in the hands in the pocket? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that is on Trudeau. I think I'm going to happily give him a pass on that. Corey, where are you at on Trudeau last night? You talked about the suite of measures. I got your analysis there. Give me your analysis on Trudeau and his political performance.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I think are interesting. One is that it started talking to Americans, not Canadians.
Yes.
But I think it was still talking to Canadians, like very meta, but it's like Canadians want to see you talking to Americans, so you got to talk to Americans when you're talking to Canadians, right? Interesting. I think that we can talk about that tactic a little bit here. Totally agree with Stephen that, I mean, this is the exact same fucking Justin Trudeau you always get. And, I thought that his delivery was fine. I thought he hit the moment pretty well. By and large, I certainly didn't leave there saying, man, I wish this guy was still there. In fact, a couple of the questions when I was talking about hockey, I think it was, and he's like, and you know how we Canadians get about hockey. You know, I'm just like, fuck off. Just fuck off. Like that Trudeau, I cannot stand. And we definitely didn't need him last night at that moment. By and large, it was good. It was serious. It was fine. I don't understand why three people who did nothing were standing behind him. It didn't show the solidarity.
Oh, you mean the human wall? Carter can explain.
Oh, I fucking hate the human wall.
Well,
Carter, could you have supplied them with a couple of brown people for that human
You know
wall?
what?
Do you have any in reserve that might be available?
What you do is you find your minorities.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I saw zero minorities. I saw
there were
zero
none
on stage.
there. It
fucking
did seem to be
hate
more
the human
role
wall.
based, but
Do you? Yeah,
can I tell you as well?
Please
like
tell me for it.
This is getting into the weeds, but
On this show?
I live in the weeds, right? The 4 flags behind him, hated it. Here's my thing. Carter, I want your opinion on this. 2 flags, fine. Normal event. Couple of flags. 8 flags, that's a wall of flags. That's fine too.
Yeah.
4 flags, what the fuck is that? There's a gap between each flag. It's so clearly 4 flags then, and it just bothered me. And it was like there was a flag per person who was there. I didn't like it.
I got a confession to make.
Yeah.
On the Carney event, I wanted 4 flags.
Fuck.
I was overruled, and we went with the giant big
Okay.
flag.
Oh,
Well,
that would have changed my analysis.
I'll tell you something. They were right in that decision.
You know?
They made the right choice.
You're a big man for being able to admit that.
You could have had one flag between each minority group that you brought onto stage.
I didn't have that many flags. That was a lot of flags.
No, I mean, but if you did, you could have
No, that would've been
separated.
great.
You
Yeah,
could
that
have
would've been
minority
great.
minority groups between flags. It would have been very nice.
We
Nice
were already
symbolic
having all
gesture.
kinds of issues with the minority groups. So I don't want to get
No,
into
don't say that.
No, do say that.
it. No, I can't talk about it.
This is a safe space. Go ahead.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not a safe place.
space.
It's not a safe
Why
place.
are you?
space.
Why are you? Which? Okay, don't tell me the issues. Tell me the groups.
No, oh yeah. Oh, there was.
Don't tell
lot
me
of
the
conflict.
just tell me the groups, and I'll guess
of
the issues.
conflict.
Just go
That's
ahead.
amazing. Okay.
Why are you so uncomfortable? You're clenching up. It's just Carter and I just having a chat about our people.
well,
Speaking of the weeds, Carter works in the Northeast Weeds. He knows.
I know it.
We know.
okay.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you know it about who?
Well, I know you're not a real Muslim. I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right.
You're not.
been a
You're
good run.
a strong,
been a
robust
great run.
defense coming from me. So.
All right.
Today's the day,
I'd like
guys.
to
Today's the day I get
apologize for the Ismaili community, to the Ismaili community.
No, I
Thank you
meant
for-
Zain himself. Just Zain.
Oh, just
I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't about.
All
the
right.
Ismaili
Oh God, yeah, no, he would never do that.
Oh, and the way I
Suicide.
interpreted that is that actually makes me the
Yeah, you're the one who. You're the one who heard the racism.
okay.
Yeah, no, that would going after the Smiley community would be political suicide, Carter.
Yeah, I would never
Which,
do. I would never do that.
That's true. Yeah, no, and never mention suicide with my people. Come on, Carter. Now listen. Let me tell you something. I disagree with both of you a bit. I think Trudeau was clear on message, but I am curious about picking up on this aspect of did he need to address Americans, and if so, and even if you disagree, did what he did in that moment punch through? And was that enough in terms of a tactic to reach the American audience? Because I will tell you, while we were having this wall-to-wall coverage on CBC and having all of our networks go live to this, including CTV News Channel and CBC, and having us glued. CNN was running a Kobe Bryant documentary from the archives. MSNBC was not covering this wall-to-wall. Even this morning on the Sunday news programs, Chrystia Freeland appeared on one of them, and tariffs was item number 3 or 4 behind the helicopter and FBI agents being smoked out by Trump. So this is, as an issue set, not necessarily registering with America. And I'm adding that as a bit of context to go back to the question, which is, did Trudeau start doing enough to start punching through? And Corey, I'm curious to hear your A, does he need to reach Americans? And B, what does he need to do? And is this the start of what he needs to do to punch through?
Well, I think we have to be realistic as Canadians about how much Americans are going to care about this. And the answer is not nearly as much as we care about it. And there's a lot of crazy shit going on. Like, yes, it might have been the 3rd or 4th story on a lot of newscasts. Let's set aside running a Kobe documentary. I can't explain that. That's weird. But when you're talking about running through the other shit that's going on in the United States, from Elon Musk taking over Treasury's payroll systems to... I mean, to the FBI looking like they're standing up against these mass fire. It might legitimately be only the 4th most important story to Americans right now in the United States.
Sure, yeah, sure. They keep losing planes. Like, there's just
that doesn't
a ton
help.
of stuff.
It's backdrop on everything. But all to say, it's never going to be that we're number one story in this particular matter. Like, you remember the joke in The Simpsons in 1990? Where Elise is calling a line and she's listening to, the Corey hotline about, because that's the name of, because it's a great name for a great celebrity, right? Corey. And he's reading the newspaper and the joke is supposed to be how boring it is. He's like, oh, Canada stalls on trade pact. Like that's like the definition of a boring line. That's a punchline. And so Canada and trade is never going to be that interesting to Americans. Now, if you're Justin Trudeau, yeah, you'd love to have the clips, I'm sure.
At the same time, though, this is not a Canada story that he's trying to make. It's not like, whoa, me. It's like, fuck, you're fucked. Like, that's the story he's trying to tell.
But is he trying to tell that story to Americans, or is he trying to tell it to us?
He's trying to tell it to us.
I think he's trying to tell it to us. We were the intended
audience.
Yeah.
Walk me through this. What do you think he was doing then last night?
Well, let me talk a bit. Sure, I'm sure the clips would be great. I'm sure he'd be happy that there's clips and there's conversation about that. In fact, if you'd asked me this question right after his speech, I'd be like, he's trying to get the Americans to pay attention to it. But on a reflection, I just don't think that's the case. I think that, especially when you consider the dynamic that's going on in this country right now, with one premier for sure, and probably 1.5 if you count Scott Moe as half a person, which nobody has ever done before.
No.
But, they're saying, you got to negotiate. You got to talk to these people. Like there is, I think, a requirement with a large number of people, not a majority, not even like a strong minority, but there is a requirement with a large number of people that you at least give it a shot. Like, you talk to them like they're an ally. You deliver the message as though you might be able to convince them, as though they're a rational actor. And so that's what he did. Like, he talked to America to show us he's talking to America, but it was for us. It wasn't for America. And
think, to be clear, you think that he did that first part in order to justify the second part, which is the retaliatory package?
No, I think he did the first part because that will be an expectation for some people.
Gotcha.
But this is really about the retaliatory package. Like, he's trying to do two things, right? And it's actually a total shame he is, because if this country was a little more tough and a little more united, he wouldn't have had to deal so much with the first one. But he's trying to keep Team Canada, together, including the premiers and all of the various people out there who have opinions and share them, on one page. And he's trying to respond to the United States of America. And one of them is about building equity to allow him to do stronger things on number 2.
Carter, talk to me about what Trudeau's trying to do, and does he need to reach Americans? And if so, how well is he doing?
I absolutely don't think he needs to reach Americans. I don't think Americans are going to hear anything until they feel something. And the feeling something is going to happen very, very quickly. A 10% tariff on oil is going to be, there's going to be some immediate impacts on the market. And if we start seeing the auto manufacturers shutting down within a week, which is what they're projecting right now, that's going to have a cascade effect that will see tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Americans losing their jobs. So I would say, you don't have to make a point. You don't have to make it to that end. It's just, instead it's just, you just, all you need to do is make sure that your people know that at some point the Americans are going to know. And that's what the I'm talking to America right now section was. It was, don't worry, they're going to find out. They fucked around and now they're going to find out.
Corey, what do you think?
I mean, do you know many people who speak French when they're speaking to Americans? Yeah, it's just like it was for us. And well, there certainly is some value in U.S. markets of bringing those clips forward. It wasn't for them. It was for us. It was talking to Canadians and trying to set the right tone and the right resolve and to say, I've done the reasonable things and now we're going to have to stiffen things up. And in many ways, we are the frogs in water, right? If the government needs to go very far, if the government needs to do the very difficult things, it needs to show to Canadians that it's taken the steps along the way that have excluded other options. And this is one of them.
Okay, let's talk about, let's do this as a set, and then you guys can split these folks apart as you need to talk about them. Smith, Moe, Poilievre. Give me your analysis on where they find themselves right now. Are they conveniently on an island with each other, or is one of them or two of them more on a mainland with the rest of Team Canada? How do you kind of assess their positioning and current position? Either how they're trying to position themselves or by a result of where everyone else has gone, where they find themselves. So I'm going to kind of put them together. Maybe you want to tease them apart. Corey, can I start with you on this?
I mean, you can. I think they have to be teased apart. I think Pierre Poilievre is in a very different situation from Danielle Smith. Scott Moe is maybe a little bit in the middle, but I'd put him more on Smith Island. Yeah. And I'd say Poilievre is on a jet ski going by it saying, oh, fuck, I hope they don't see me. I hope they don't wave me down. Because he's in a lot of trouble on this particular one. He's in a box. And you're starting to see him realize that this is not going to be the carbon tax election that was on his wish board as a child.
Yes. And
Canada first.
We said that last week, and I think it's extremely clear this week. And
it's extremely clear this week.
Yeah.
But if he's moving towards more of a Canada first, I'm going to fight for Canada.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind talking a bit about that Canada first, because I actually think it's a bit of a clunker for a few reasons, some obvious. Well, that's really tough when you've got Danielle Smith and Scott Moe saying, basically, no, Canada maybe, right? And Danielle Smith almost said that exactly. She's like, I'm on Team Canada if Team Canada does what I want them to do. I'm not even really paraphrasing. And
no, right. Beginning certain statements with Donald Trump is right to mention X, Y, and Z and go after A, B, and C. And then to your point, add in that line of, and Canada could be right if we do A, B, and C and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, well, and I don't want to throw like everything on the table here, but I'll just say Danielle Smith, I think increasingly this position doesn't look wise. I think Lisa Young wrote a pretty good article about that today. And Danielle Smith wrote in the National Post today about how, oh, they're an ally. I'm going to talk to them like they're an ally. This was clearly written before yesterday, I'm assuming, or certainly before Donald Trump started tweeting in response this morning about how really this is all a pretext and he wants us to be the 51st state. The disconnect between reality and the justification Smith is using right now is becoming so stark that even very diehard conservatives are having trouble with it. And so can she ride that bull? I don't know. That's an interesting question, but she's in a really weird place right now. I think she's in the weirdest place of everybody. Poilievre's in probably the most damaging place of everybody, but Smith's in the weirdest one.
Carter, are they all on the same island together? As I don't posit that to you, but it's a starting point for me. Or are you teasing them apart like Corey has here?
No, I mean, Pierre Poilievre has seen very clearly that he has to bring forward different messaging than Danielle Smith. I mean, he's gone right away to Canada first. He's trying to put on his Captain Canada cloak and fly away, or maybe it's a cape. But he's trying to show that he's part of the team while showing that he's not part of Justin Trudeau's team, which frankly, I don't begrudge him that positioning. I think that that's the position that he should have. He's the opposition leader, not the guy, he's not the deputy prime minister, and he should be in a position where he can critique from outside. But I'd like to see him doing, and I think that he's to a degree he's doing this. He's starting to become more like a government in waiting, and this really fast pivot away from his carbon tax. It was going to be a carbon tax election 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe if we're not as kind. And now it's not, and it's just gone. That opportunity is ended. He's moved pretty fast to Canada first. I think it's a terrible move. I think that the messaging and the branding is entirely wrong. After your great cousin to the United States or to the South has just done America first, and it's turning into a fucking gong show for us. But that's a different issue. I think that Pierre's on his own. I'm going to steal Corey's metaphor and go with the jet ski. Well, Danielle Smith, instead of being on an island, I've put her on a slowly sinking sailboat that has lost the wind and is just sitting out there in the middle of the lake, and no one, not even Scott Moe, wants to go rescue her. Scott Moe was on the sailboat earlier, but he somehow managed to just kind of disappear. He's not really there. He's not really not there, but he's managed to disappear from the zeitgeist because Danielle Smith has taken most of the heat.
Corey, talk to me about this. We'll talk about the Canada First brand in a second. Keeping with our stream of analysis, I am curious to get your take. If you see any daylight between Trudeau, Carney, and Freeland, and where do you see that daylight, if anywhere, and should there be any, and how do two of those three people who are trying to become the next prime minister separate themselves from the guy who is prime minister, when that seems to be the fundamental task of the leadership, but may not necessarily be the fundamental task for the country and the moment? I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly. So I'm kind of curious if how you're looking at the dynamic between the three of them and how they need to play this.
Well, it's interesting because in some ways it feels like they've consciously taken the dynamic off the table. All of the leadership candidates signing that statement, effectively saying, yeah, we're with the prime minister. I'm paraphrasing deeply, right? But it's effectively said, we're going to let the federal government do the analysis. And by the way, a bit of an aside here, that makes perfect sense. One of the things that I think people fail to appreciate is just how much more you know when you're in government than when you're out of government. And yeah, you can read all of the newspaper articles you want. You don't have a Department of Trade who's going to tell you exactly the consequences of each of these choices for both yourself and your allies / not allies down south. You don't have the knowledge of what the conversations have been with Great Britain, with Germany, with any of your other potential partners. And so you've got to sort of let the prime minister cook, right? You got to let him do his thing. This is a time where you've really got to rely on the analysis that the federal government is doing. Doesn't mean they're always going to be right. It just means everything else being equal, they're more likely to be right than you because they just know so much more. And this is a very complex, very information-dependent exercise we now find ourselves in. So I think that's one thing. And I think that the Liberal leadership candidates, particularly Carney and Freeland, understand that. Freeland has suggested going a little bit further on, Tesla or Elon Musk. I can't remember exactly what she was proposing there.
Yeah.
And so I guess you could say there's a little bit of daylight there, but it's not strong. And also at the technical briefing today, the federal government basically hinted that might be coming anyways, right? So in some ways, it might just be a little ahead, not so much as different.
In Carter, in some strange way, these campaigns are directly and indirectly lobbying the federal government with certain measures that they want, right? Talking about dollar for dollar or Elon Musk, et cetera. But in the moment, is there a political penalty to be played by agreeing with the prime minister?
No.
Okay.
This is probably the. I mean, if we accept the idea that this is an economic war. And I think that Canadians in general have accepted the idea that this is an economic war. A war was declared upon us and we are responding in kind. It is, and the reason I say that is that I evidence the booing of in Calgary. In Calgary at the hockey game, there was a booing of the American national anthem.
For our listeners who may not be from Alberta, why do you emphasize in Calgary a few times?
I actually am not sure why you do myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Calgary is, number one, the most American city in Canada. We have the most Americans who actually live here. Number two, our oil and gas industry is paramount. And the protection of the oil and gas industry, I think, would be deemed to be super important. And we got a little carve out there. So we got a little bit of what we wanted. And yet we still said, fuck you, Trump, by booing the national anthem. I can't remember where I was going before.
No, you're saying in Calgary, the booing of the national anthem. You're effectively going down that path, and I interrupted you.
Yeah, I think that the booing of the national anthem. I think that people understand that they're in a economic war, and this is time for people to come together. And people expect Pierre Poilievre to be together. They expect Elizabeth May to be together. They would expect Jagmeet Singh to be together, but no one's seen him, so it's really irrelevant. So when Elizabeth May, no, I'm not going to go down there. But bottom line, these people have made, they're jumping in on war footing, and I wouldn't even be surprised to see Justin Trudeau take steps to bring Poilievre in even closer.
So I really am intrigued by that. Corey, can we go back to the federal scene between the two leaders for a second? One who's going to be leaving in 5-6 weeks, and the other one who is trying to become prime minister and was almost guaranteed the job a year ago by the Canadian public with steady polls. If you're Poilievre right now, are you worried that you're not necessarily getting the spotlight as you have for the last 2 years on this issue? Or can you wait this out, and as long as you're right on the overall notion, Canada first, inflation, etc., you're fine. You're still okay. Or are you wanting every single day that the PM goes up or escalates or this conversation happens to get into the news and desperately be there on a day-to-day basis? How are you thinking about this if you're him?
If I'm Poilievre, I'm fucking terrified that I'm about to blow a 25-point lead because the ground has shifted so fundamentally, and the decisions that I made in the lead up
terrified?
To that moment,
like terrified?
The decisions I made in the lead up have put me in a box. I'm in a box of my own making here, and it is a desperately bad situation to be in. Now, don't misunderstand me. He's still leading in kind of the poll of polls. It's looking fine for him. Instead of 25 points, we're now seeing 15 to 20. We'd call that a blowout in any other context, but it's hard to ignore the trend line that some of the pollsters are seeing. I'm not saying that you even have to love all of the pollsters, but even wherever the pollsters' baseline is, when they start seeing movement like that, there's always two things with polls, right? There's position and there's momentum. And the momentum is starting to tell a story that would really, really alarm me if I was Pierre Poilievre. So I'm trying to get in there all of the time. I'm trying to show that I'm Captain Canada. We talked about this a couple of months ago even, I think. This is how you get into maybe it wasn't that long, maybe a month, a bidding war where you're just trying to be more Canadian than the next guy. You're Canadian, fuck you. I've got 3 giant flags instead of your 4 shitty regular flags, right? And my lectern has a sign that talks about how much I fucking love this country. And you can easily see that starting to take shape and place here, but it almost feels like an ill-thought-out panic response. And this maybe gets us into this conversation about Canada first. But
yeah, let's do it, because I was going to move to strategy. Start us off on it.
So 2 problems with it. One is obvious. Carter's already talked about it. America First is the slogan of the guy that we all hate right now. You've basically taken the slogan of the quote-unquote enemy and you're using that. I just don't know if that's a particularly wise idea. But problem 2 is probably more fatal if it becomes all about who's putting Canada first. It actually, they are not the answer to that question. If you have, like we talk about ballot questions a lot, if your ballot question becomes who will put Canada first, the thing you've put on your fucking lectern, you're not the answer to that question. You are not the answer to that question. There are so many pictures that will be able to be trotted out of your advisors in mega caps, you talking about how broken Canada is, you talking about how America is an example of what we need to do. You will fucking lose. And so I can't understand why they didn't go with something that was more like, I appreciate this particular phrasing is taken, but Canada strong, right? Like, I'm going to make Canada strong. We're going to win this by being strong, and I can make us strong, and the Liberals have made us weak. That more explicitly makes sense to me for the Conservatives. But Canada first, my dude, nobody thinks you're the guy you go to when you need to put Canada first. For the Liberals, for all of their faults, all of their foibles, that's their brand. That's a brand they've built over decades, if not centuries at this point, or like century plus. It's a real challenge that he's got. I don't know why he's putting himself in that position.
I mean, Corey does make a good point here, and especially when we talk about the Liberals positioning as the natural governing party of Canada. A lot of that is historically around wrapping themselves in the flag. I mean, we've we've all had a strange
flag they invented.
Correct. I was going to say, we've all had a couple of stranger relationships with the flag, pandemic and all those other things, people rejecting the flag, so to speak. But if this becomes if the flag is the ballot box question, putting it simply, Corey's assessment here might be right. What do you think about Canada First, and what do you think would make it better? I like your two suggestions, Corey. I want to give Carter the same shot.
Well, I mean, let's just start off by going through a few synonyms, right? Canada powerful, Canada muscular, Canada brawny, Canada well-built, Canada powerfully built, Canada strapping.
I'm sorry, are you creating Canada
hefty?
Can we just
Canada
get
burly?
Is this Canada GPT? Is this Canada GPT
Canada
right here?
robust? No, it's a thesaurus. It's a thesaurus.
It's Canada GPT.
It's a thesaurus.
Let's make sure we own that, Corey. Let's make sure we own Canada GPT.
Yeah,
I need our own Canadian version of GPT.
It's almost certainly taken, but okay.
No, let's go for it.
Anyways, the point of the exercise. I mean, you're stealing your slogan anyways. You may as well steal someone else's. And I'm not sure I would go with Canada Strong. I think there's something. There's probably something there. There's probably something around there. But being the captain of Team Canada is probably the right thing. I haven't seen his response. Have we seen his response to Justin Trudeau last night? I've not seen him calling. I would come out calling for stronger measures that go after Trump and go after Elon Musk. So that's what I would like to see. More action.
From a strategic perspective, you want him to punch harder, punch high. Okay, Corey, build on to this.
I 100% agree, but I think this is exactly my concern with Canada First for the Conservatives. You're not acting in a way that suggests that is actually your dictating principle, right? You are a little
You
quiet.
mean authentically? You're not. Yeah, right.
Look, I mean, the biggest time you're going to get into problems in politics is when what you're doing and what you're saying are so misaligned, right? That just creates a tension that you're going to have to address at some point in some way, shape, or form. As much as we can become cynics and be like, oh, it's just words, their actions are so different than their words. The reality is we pick words that people believe, and a lot of the belief comes from actions we can point to, proof points, we say, right? And if you're saying I'm Canada First, but I won't fucking say a word about Danielle Smith going down to Mar-a-Lago, people are going to call you on that. If you say I'm Canada First, but you don't want to call out extremists because you know that your donor base has an awful lot of extremists in it, people are going to call you out on it.
Or if you've been spending the last 3 years telling people how broken Canada is inherently, of course, due to Justin Trudeau, but that shit has a blast radius beyond your control in some ways.
A box of his own making is how I described it. And I stand by it. I mean, I think that one of the things that seemed like a pretty good strategy for a few years, you're starting to see the limitations at this moment. And the comment was made on the strategist Discord, and it was so good. And I think it was Matt who made it. And if it wasn't, well, Matt, congratulations. You're being credited with this.
Yeah, and the person who did make it, if it wasn't Matt, you're never getting credit. Even when we
change your name to Matt.
We probably have to.
Then you'll get the credit for this here, right? But when you have spent all of these years talking about how broken and bad Canada is, it's hard to make the pivot to Canada is great. And it was, you know what? I don't think it was Matt now, but it was, the idea is if you're saying Canada's broken, that can only take you so far. It's like this negative, shitty emotion. And the minute Trudeau's gone, you're in a little bit of trouble. How do you then pivot to Canada's awesome? Canada's the best. The difference between, this idea of Canada being broken and make America great again is this difference of emphasis, right? It's a difference of,
ambition and emphasis. Yeah.
Exactly. Versus the challenges. And he chose to go with the challenges, and here we are.
Yeah, he chose to go with leader of the opposition.
He did.
Which he chose to go with leader of the opposition.
One of Paul Wells' rules, right? The person who auditions for the job of leader of the opposition gets it.
Carter, let's talk a bit about strategy beyond Pierre Poilievre. And I like where we're going here, but I do want to spend a fair chunk of time on what do our leaders want and need the country to feel, and is just simply more patriotic, more Canada, more feels in that regard enough as part of our immune system that we need our domestic sort of public to feel. And then stemming from there, what sort of campaigns or tactics do we need to run? So, for example, a few things I want to throw out on the table. Do any of our provincial governments or our federal government need to take out a massive, wrap yourself in the flag ad campaign? Do we need to take out specific tactical campaigns as it relates to products, services, common citizenship, civil society, helping one another, etc.? Do we need to go? Where do we need to go here, right? And I think we directionally and notionally know, but I'd like to spend a few more minutes strategically talking about what our leaders need the Canadian public to feel. Can you start us off on this, and then I'll go to Corey?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things. The two examples that I think of right off the top are some kind of, and I kind of like a mix of this. I'd like the Molson Canadian "I am Canadian" ad, right? That is what we need to feel is, I am Canadian. I am Joe and I am Canadian. That ad needs to be part of the feeling. And then the other part of the feeling is when we all just intuitively and instinctively went out on our front door, on our front step, and banged our pots and pans for the frontline workers who are helping us through COVID. Both of those are the feelings that we need to be feeling right now, because we have to wrap ourselves in the flag. We have to understand that we as a collective are under attack. We need to understand that we are part of that, and we are the defense to it. We're going to feel their enemy at this point. And then we also have to have this collective sense of it's going to be tough, but we're going to get through it together. Because I think that what we're not quite understanding yet is how much this is going to hurt, right? It will hurt Canadians. It will hurt Albertans. It will hurt Calgarians. Wherever you live, whatever you do, your life's about to get harder. In the same way that your life got harder during COVID, and we were all in it together until we weren't. And the interesting thing that I think is fascinating is that the federal election is coming up in a timeline where we're all probably still going to be together before we start to break apart. And that's a very interesting scenario. Very interesting scenario.
Corey, I'm going to get you to answer this question, but I wanted to clarify one thing with Stephen, and I really appreciate your answer, Carter. You said enemy. Was that deliberate to have our leaders ensure that to the public that the United States is our enemy?
No.
Okay.
I said we're their enemy. That is a very different phrasing and a very different position structure.
Okay, excellent. Glad I clarified.
Right.
How about the other way around? What do they need? What do they need Canadians to feel about Americans? Right? How should they view them as the opposition? Right? How should they view them as simply as temporary opposition? Should it be charged at Trump? How do we process? Right? Give me the guardrails. Give me the tracks in terms of how I, as a Joe Public, sitting right here, need to think about this and feel about this, Carter.
Well, I think that we want to feel betrayed by our best friend. Right? We want to, in some fashion, feel like our best friend betrayed us, and we'd still like to be friends with them. But we can't be friends as long as they continue to betray us. If they stop betraying us and they apologize, then we can be best friends again, because that's what best friends do.
We don't
best
hold a
friends
grudge,
make up.
sort of thing.
We make up, right? Corey and I, after all these years, back together again, right?
Almost friends. I was going to say, after all these years, almost friends.
Almost friends.
This close.
Still acquaintances.
The betrayal of not being invited to his wedding still stings, but I'm going to get through it.
I eloped. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't invited. Were you invited, Zain?
No, I sat right next to him, and I found out he got married when he returned on the Monday.
You're welcome.
Yep. Yeah. I was upset. I'm still upset.
I was not upset. I still thought his name didn't have an E in it, so I barely knew him then.
That's right. If you're going
I also thought the
website,
CEO of our company was a Jewish woman, and he turned out to be an Indian man. So
yeah, okay, great.
Goldie Hader, look him up.
Yeah,
very proud, very Indian. Good dude. Corey, keep going. Carter, keep going on this.
No, I'm done. That's all I have.
Okay.
I think that it's really important, though, that we do not position ourselves that we are the enemies with the United States.
That's
right
good.
now, they have made us their enemy. Yeah.
Corey, what do we need what do our leaders need the Canadian public to feel?
I think disappointment and betrayal are the things that Canadians are feeling right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know that we need them to feel that, but that's got to be channeled into resolve. So Stephen is 100% right that the pain hasn't happened yet. Before every fight, before every war, trade or otherwise, bluster is high. People say, you know what, I'm going to win and fuck you and you're going to get hurt and I'm not going to get hurt. Well, the experience of every war, trade or otherwise, is both sides get hurt. And that hurt sucks. And I disagree that we're not going to hold a grudge on this. I actually think that one of the things that's likely to come out of this is a trepidation towards the United States going forward. And this is probably a time where a party could have a serious conversation about what it means to be economically sovereign, militarily sovereign, culturally sovereign. And those lead, again, to some answers that are maybe take you away from the Conservatives on 2 out of those 3. And one of those 3, the Conservatives could very much take on, like military sovereignty, I mean. So it's going to be interesting to see. And the answer is really quite dependent on who you are. And here we are at minute 50. We haven't mentioned that Doug Ford called an election because he thought, well, this is a great fucking opportunity. I could win something on this. And there's going to be different types of opportunism that occurs right here, too. And so what do they want them to feel? What are your objectives in the short term? For Doug Ford, they want them to feel, we need a fighter. Like, we fucking need somebody who's going to stand up for this.
He's gone with Protect Ontario as is.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you're Justin Trudeau, that's not what you want them to feel. You don't want them to feel we need a fighter. You want them to feel we need to double down on being Canadian to get this done. Like, we got to have resolve about who we are. So different goals, different objectives, different ambitions.
Tactics? Talk to me about some tactics. Let's just narrow in on the federal government or provincial leaders. Ad campaigns, other things. Like, how would you be thinking about this as we escalate on the actual measures? How would you be thinking about the vibes, the feelings, how you bring the public alongside? Who wants to go first? Carter? Carter, you just yawned, so do you want to go first?
No, I'll go first because it's 9:25 and it's almost bedtime.
Yeah,
but I think that we want an ad campaign. I think that we want to see that the federal government is acting. And I right now the communications are the list of foods or the list of goods that are being facing tariffs on Tuesday was circulated. I don't know if you guys tried to read that, but your eyes go crossed.
I did.
That's not a communications campaign. That's information, and communications is very, very different than just simply disseminating information. And with that, Lob, I'll throw it over to my friend Corey Hogan.
Yeah. Well, first off, what the fuck is this is a question that Canadians are still grappling with, some more than others. Kind of brings us back to where you started us, Zain, right?
Yeah.
But if people think, oh, this is just a legitimate concern of Americans and we'll just resolve this, and this is just a regular trade war, and, regular trade wars require us to use the regular trade war book, it's going to lead you to one course of actions. If it's not that, it leads you to a different course of action. And so I think that if I'm the federal government, I'm spending a fair bit of money making sure that we have a consensus in the country as to what this is. And I do think with these things where people are starting in different places, you have to give them a way to artfully get to your position without backing down or eating a bunch of shit. So for sure, that means talking about Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith specifically and how you get her more on Team Canada's bus more fully and almost get her to feel like, well, I've been betrayed by Donald Trump. I was willing to give it a shot. That was a reasonable thing to do. Have the Prime Minister say that was a reasonable thing, Danielle. But here we are, right? But it's not just her. It's just in general trying to move people away from the notion that this is normal. Some of that will occur with time if steps escalate, right? Like we're recording this on a Sunday night. Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau are talking tomorrow morning.
That's what here, yeah.
Donald Trump is taking a lot of flack for this, and his protests are pretty lame online right now. He might do what he did with Colombia, which is surrender and then declare victory, right? So we'll see.
And he could at any point. It's such a manufactured, especially when you go back to the border.
Like, how do you solve a fake problem? I don't know. Just declare it solved. It's not hard, right? But
his most recent thing is he's posting New York Post articles with Toby Luke from Shopify, being like, "Look, even this guy agrees with me." It's just like it's pretty lame. It's pretty lame validators.
It's lame validators. It's a great point. So, if you can get them though to understand what this is and get to that next playbook, I'll tell you, the playbook is the war playbook. And again, we're going to use war in this broad term to include trade wars here, right? But it's It's propaganda campaigns in the country saying, look at the enemy and be aware of them, right? It's buy bonds, buy Canadian. It's nationalizing, the National Post and Post Media and saying, okay, we can't have foreign interference in our conversations around here. By the way, I think an idea that is not crazy is to nationalize the National Post and then give the shares to the people who work for the National Post, or Post Media, in Canada, and basically say, we'll get the money from you when you sell your shares, right? Like, we can't have a foreign hedge fund owning all of our daily newspapers at a moment like this, when that nation, anyways, I don't want to detour on that. But the point is,
that's a great idea.
That's almost like a lend-lease plan that you bring forward. So look at what we did in World War II. Look at what we did in Korea. Look at what we do when times get tough. And those things generally go to getting the team on side, making sacrifice your moral duty, and then going from there, hanging together and doing the hard things.
Carter, we're going to move it on to our over-under and our lightning round. Stephen Carter, we do this for you because we like to give you enough time to wind down before bed.
I do enjoy that.
We don't want you all riled up.
Yeah, we don't want you to just go straight from microphone to sack and just roll over, right?
There had to be a better phrasing.
Yeah.
To sack was not exactly. I got
it immediately made me think of Dominic LeBlanc.
In his hand in his pocket. I thought of Alanis Morissette.
Carter, Corey already gave me his answer to this. Or he may not have. I'll give him another shake at it. One campaign or one strategy. A campaign run by a government, a third party, a citizens group, a labor organization that you would pitch to get started right now. In the face of this broader threat, the domestic sort of vibes and currents, what would you be thinking of? And it could be housed anywhere. I'll give you like this wide berth in terms of what it is and where it could go. One campaign that Stephen Carter would want to put on the table and see active and alive right now.
Well, it's funny. I think that we're going to see a lot of campaigns become active because all of a sudden we are going to be we are energized for politics. We are energized for these words. I would love to have no Australian mines on the eastern slopes, like these no multinationals, no external companies mining our coal out of our pristine environment. It doesn't need to be buy local chickens, right? Like it doesn't need to be, buy local meats. It doesn't need to be buy within 100 miles. Everything is going to be on the table because everybody has changed the way that they're interacting on this stuff. They're not just going to be interacting on, isn't this interesting, this situation that has happened with the trade war. This is everything. This is the hockey game is getting protested. So if the hockey game is being protested, find a unique and interesting way to do your campaign, whatever it is. And in a perfect world, partner up. Find 2 or 3 other organizations because this is the time to make your organization have more breadth and more strength than it normally would.
Corey, what do you think?
Give me $40 million a month, and I will make his life a living hell in the United States. We should run the most excruciating, targeted,
Lincoln Project style.
Every single dollar.
No, listen, better than the Lincoln.
Here's the reality: there is a real foundational reason their prices are going to go up as a result of Donald Trump's actions. That's a real thing. That you could make them think their prices are going up because of Donald Trump's actions without a real thing, but you actually have a real fucking thing. You could have signs up, you could have billboards outside of grocery stores saying, on average, your trip to this grocery store is going to cost X number of dollars more because Donald Trump decided to pick a fight with Canada or whatever. Like, you focus group it, you identify those target audiences, you make the pain real in the areas where it hurts them the most. I think that given the consequences to our economy, spend a lot of money advertising in the United States to just make it not worth the time for them, like just to hurt them like crazy, fuck them up on everything else they want to do in their Project 2025 thing, make them think, good, for the love of God, we're going to be running a U.S. presidential style campaign attack ads against us from now until the end of time if we don't just relent on these stupid fucking Canadian tariffs.
Can I join your company when we get that contract?
I mean, you can audition for a job. Maybe.
I got 3 more over-under questions, but I'm not going to actually go to them because I actually want to pick up on what Corey said and end on here.
You also looking for a job? Is that what's going on?
No, I'm not.
Just me? Okay.
No, I don't like to work. If this show is any proof point. Hey, listen, Corey, you said something that was quite interesting, which is the American campaign, which I wanted to bring up. I like that a lot. But you also mentioned earlier that the Trump-Trudeau conversation's happening tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Give me a sense of the terrain from as many areas as you can or want to, should this trade dispute be resolved by the end of tomorrow. Trump declares victory, 25%, and 25 and 10 is off the table, 25 on 30 billion, and then an extra 155 is off the table from us, and then the haze kind of settles. What's the terrain here? And here's what I'm trying to ask. Do the conservatives have the edge again? Is the ballot box question reset? Is just like what happens in this haze where and this is not impossible. It's not like I'm not betting on it, but it's not impossible that Donald Trump declares victory tomorrow. So let's just end with this hypothetical exercise and give me a sense of where you think the terrain goes if that were to happen tomorrow. And Carter, same question to you to finish us off.
So I definitely don't think it's impossible. I think if there's one thing we've learned about Donald Trump, it's that he's a caged animal and he reacts to the stimulus that occurs, right? And one of the things he's getting right now is a lot of abuse from people who normally give him praise, like the Wall Street Journal, like, just in general, the Murdoch properties, right, are saying, what the hell are you doing? Fox News is running lists of these are the things that are going to get more expensive.
And having Doug Ford doing a morning and an evening hit with them.
Absolutely. And so I think I really wouldn't discount this possibility that, and you can easily see how it happens, right? You get on a call. If you're the prime minister, you're saying, well, fuck, I'm not going to sewer our entire economy just to make him eat a bunch of shit. So I say, yes, Donald, we'll put another $200 million into, we're going to do better at hitting our NATO commitments because we should fucking do that anyways, right? Not the 5% Trump's come up with, but the 3%. Yeah. So we're going to invest $10 billion more in our military, right? And then Donald Trump says, yeah, I talked to the Canadian Prime Minister.
What a weakling. So sad.
Yeah, he's so sad, tragic, but he agreed that he'd do what's necessary to protect it. America first, we won, and then declare victory, and he can point to this thing, and then we all move on with our lives. But it is an open question to me if that resets things, because I don't believe in that scenario he fully takes tariffs off the table. I think that would be too much of a climb down for him. So I think he says, but I still got this loaded gun on the table, basically. And I think Canadians have learned something here, right? And it's not to trust America. It has fundamentally changed the environment, regardless of what happens next. Is it enough to sustain to an election in 6 months? Hell no. But to Stephen's point, the timing of this potential election is really interesting. We could be in an election. We could be in an election sooner than that, right? We could get to next week when $125,000 is due from each of the Liberal leadership candidates, and everyone says, you know what, I'm out. Mark,
fuck this
you
shit.
can have
Mark,
this.
It's yours. Yeah.
I don't have 125. I could easily see that, which means he gets sworn in, which means the Governor General probably says, okay, get Parliament back. I'm not going to let you be Prime Minister for a month and a half without, proving that you can have the confidence of the House. And we're in an election like that. And if we're in an election underneath the cloud of everything that just happened, I don't think there's time for it to pivot back. October election, we're talking about different things for sure. April election, I don't know.
Carter, I'm going to give you a shake on this.
I want you to think back to the last time you wet your pants. And you're going to remember that for quite a while, right? You remembered it not just in the moment, not just when you were taking off your pants, not just as you were having a shower. What is this, last week?
I don't want to undercut your metaphor, but I cannot tell you when the last time I wet my pants.
Oh, I remember. My mind's like...
I'm asking Zain, not you.
It's when we finalized the purchase for disgraceleaderbrown.com.
Oh, great.
I was like, we got it.
And he wet his pants right then. He was so happy. But you feel it for a while, and you don't let go of that feeling for quite some time. Well, Canada just collectively pissed our pants. And we're not going to let go of this collective feeling for some time. And I think that the person that really benefits is Mark Carney. I don't think that, I think that the Liberal leadership is unfolding that way, and that the election's going to be held in relatively short order. I don't think those are two secrets. I think that that's actually going to happen. And if those things happen, the way that Corey described them, then all of a sudden Pierre Poilievre is on the back foot. And it's not about where the numbers are. Where the numbers are is almost irrelevant. It's always the slope of the graph. How much momentum do you have? If it is a downward slope, you're sucking wind. It is all over. Your life you can't turn it around. If it is an upward slope, your life everything is easier. And right now, Liberals have an upward slope and the Conservatives have a downward slope.
Let's end on this. I said I was going to end on that, but let's end on this. Overrated, underrated, Corey. 400,000 Liberal registrants now revealed as being the voter base for this election in March. Overrated or underrated?
I'm going to go with overrated. That's a lot of people. I don't mean that that's overrated if there were actually 400,000, but I think that now the Liberals have a challenge in that the number of voters will almost certainly not be 400,000. Like the barrier to get that first step done is pretty low. I could fill it in for everybody
Impossibly
I knew.
low, I would say.
Yeah, I could fill it in for everybody I know. That's not enough to get to vote. You're going to have to prove that you're eligible to vote. You're going to have to probably scan your ID with your phone or something like that. I don't know what they're actually considering. It's so funny. I was so in on this Liberal leadership contest. I was talking to people. I was trying to figure it all out. And then Trump happened and I got pretty distracted. But I do know it will be a two-step process where there's more gating. And that 400,000 is going to become 200,000 overnight, is going to come to like 150 who actually vote. Like this is my prediction. And so the Liberals' challenge now is going to be that number is coming down. It's actually kind of a good add-on from Carter's last point. It's the momentum. It's the trajectory. If you had said to me, 150,000 people vote in this Liberal leadership contest, I'd be like, fuck, really? That's amazing. But now, if you're like, it's 400, actually, it's not going to be 400, it's 200, actually, it's going to be 150. I'm not going to think it's bad, but I'm not going to think it's amazing. And so I think that in that sense, it's overrated.
Carter, overrated or underrated?
I think it's underrated. I think that, first of all, we seem to be forgetting right off the top, this was a very short period of time. And Corey and I have also decided that we have reached an agreement, and henceforth, all leadership shall be this length of time.
We're of accord. The strategists have decreed it's an official position of the Strategist Media Corporation. This proves all leadership contests should just be like 2 months long.
Tops.
I was not consulted, but I can get on board.
You weren't consulted. I want you to think about that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the person who ran the most successful leadership race most recently. That's fine.
You know what? You know, how long was that fucking leadership race?
According to you, it was done in 2 days.
Yeah.
It was over.
Exactly. So
It
launched
took
and done.
Yeah. A lot of wasted time in there. A lot of fat to cut.
A lot of fat to cut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can get on board. But Carter, you're still going with underrated. Finish us off on that thought, and then I'll wrap us up.
I think 400,000 people signed up in 2 weeks. That's an amazing thing.
It's wild.
I think
so
that
crazy.
200,000 people could vote. 150,000 people could vote. It won't matter. 400,000 people have their names in a database, and the Liberals get to play with them.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that I didn't think they were going to get more than they had. Like, we've been so conditioned over time to think you need time to register these members, but it turns out it's the same no matter how much time you give yourself. Everybody's so
time
deadline.
always boils down to two things: the launch and the finish.
You're right. And it had a launch and it had a finish. So
yeah, that's it.
It also follows the basic principle, right? Like the work takes as long as you have to get it done, sort of thing. Yeah. And if you give people a long period of time, they will slack off for 3 months if they can.
Is that what you did on your campaign?
Is that what you did?
No,
that explains some of the transition
for the 3 months. Yeah.
Challenges there. Yeah,
I don't know what I did for the 3 months. I have no idea. It's just the time gone. Time, yeah. Carter, I don't gloat about my successes. Our successes.
Well, you only have the one.
That's true. Should we wrap it up?
I guess that's
so much. I'm pretty hurt after that. Someone else want to do it? Carter, how about you do it?
We're going to leave it there.
That's it for another episode of The Strategist.
1848F.
With me as always. With me as always, Zain Velji, butthurt as always, and Corey Hogan. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Oh, okay. I forgot that part.